You can pick up on this case.
Okay, you're not even there as an attendee at the moment. We'll give you a second to appear. Hi everyone who's joining. Apologies, please bear with us. We've got some technical issues and we're just trying to figure them out. Excel team, are you the green room?
Yeah.
Just nod or thumbs up. Great. Need to wait for it to stop jumping around for a second and then hopefully I'll be able to add you. Okay, green room has been promoted to panelist. Hopefully.
We're going to just try and accept.
Okay. Everyone else joining, welcome to the session. Green room, if you put your video on and put your microphone on as a group, this might be the best way to make sure that we can see and hear all of you, because
Can you hear us, Julia?
oh, there's horrible feedback, but I can hear you.
We should be okay now.
Can you hear us, Julia?
We can now, okay, we can see you, we can hear you, and there is no feedback now. Hello. Oh, that took a while.
We've got there.
We got there. I need to make someone a co-host as well, but I'm not sure who.
Mate, I'm just gonna
Please feel free to make Katie the co-host.
Okay, I'll make Katie a co-host. We probably should have figured this one out.
and we're all good. This is how it should.
Okay.
This is how it should go.
Excellent. Okay, but now if you speak, I honestly think the best thing is going to be if you just keep green room on camera and mic, and then everyone else is off, and then just like whoever's talking, just stand up so we can see who's talking.
So you just want us to present to the screen, basically.
If you just present to the screen, we'll be able to see you, and this will all be fine, hopefully. Hi to our attendees.
Stay on.
Apologies for the tech difficulties coming in, but we now have all of the Excel team here. You can all see there on the screen waving, and we also have Noah as well. And we are also going to have Bola joining later, who hopefully is in the room. Yes, excellent. I see you, and we'll also be promoting you to panelist a bit as well, and hopefully that will work. Welcome to today's session. I'm just going to jump straight in after the tech and anyone else can join later. Welcome to today's session. We're in for a real treat. We're going to be hearing all about building a personal brand and networking from Excel. We've got I'm going to let all of you introduce yourselves in a second, but basically, as usual, we've got Q&As open, so please ask questions throughout. Please feel free to also drop in. What we've been doing sometimes is like asking questions live as well, but we can figure that out as we go along. We didn't have time to establish that before going live, and we're also going to have one of our presenters. Katie, you should now be a co-host, so you will also be able to make people go live and promote if you need to. I think that's everything we need, so I'll hand over to all of you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and welcome to the session. And I think what we'll do to start with is just do a quick whip round so you've got a sense of who's in the room. And then we'll go through a little bit of an overview of Accel, what we look for as an investor as we hire people into the team here, and a few moments on networking before jumping into the session led by Noah around building the sort of personal brand and storytelling. And then, as Julia said, Q&A at the end. So very briefly, I'm Holly. I lead our ecosystem and portfolio development function here at Accel. In short, it breaks down into two areas. So the first is on the pre-deal side, looking to unearth the next generation of founders through people signals. And then secondly, I look to support our portfolio companies as they scale through introductions to advisors, talent, business development connections, and beyond. Over to you, Will.
Hi, everyone. This is Will Sheldon. I'm part of the investment team here with Accel. I focus on our efforts in software and fintech across Europe and Israel. Have been working as an investor for around 10 years now, and really thrilled to have the opportunity to engage with this great community and looking forward to the session today. So great to meet you all virtually.
I'll go next then. So I'm Chloe Palmer. I am the head of people here at Accel. So I have the privilege of being the head of people for our team. And I also work with our portfolio companies on a range of people, talent, HR matters as they're going through that scaling journey.
And hi, everyone. I'm Cassandra. I was also, we met at the first alumni panel conversation. I was part of the first Future VC cohort. And this is actually where I met the team here at Accel and working with Holly on the ecosystem and portfolio development team.
And lastly, I'm Katie. So I'm head of community and events here at Accel. I've been with the company since 2014. So I'm responsible for events, strategy, curation, and execution, our community platform, and just ensuring we have a consistent brand experience across everything we do. And we're excited to be here today.
And then if we bring up the slides, Will can give a few minutes on Accel to start with.
I'll very quickly add in.
Oh, no.
It's all right. I know.
I was going to say, no, I was expecting you to do the grand reveal in a few moments, but please, yeah,
Okay,
jump in now.
I'll do my grand reveal now. Just to say, very nice to be here in our virtual session today. I specialize in impact and presentation coaching, and impact isn't even a word I knew existed. But prior to that was an actor, and I remember sitting in a dressing room in a wig and breeches, and someone going, "I'm going to help someone do to train them for a presentation on the weekend." And I had one of those moments of where I went, "That is my calling," even though I didn't know what it is. And that was 20 years ago, and I'm kind of working out what that calling is as we go all the time. You know, it's a really interesting what we show and how we communicate. It's ever evolving and never ending. So I look forward to getting into a bit of that today.
Are we able to share the
Yeah,
slides?
we're just sharing the
Okay.
slides now.
Awesome. Great. So guys, I'm up first just to share a quick overview of Accel as a firm. So in short, Accel, we were originally founded about 40 years ago over in Silicon Valley. I think what really draws me personally to Accel, originally being from the UK, is the philosophy we have as a firm that the best companies in the world can come from anywhere in the world. And you kind of see that on this map, that we've been very fortunate to partner with exceptional founders from all corners of the world. At this point, we have 3 offices. So we're in Silicon Valley over on the west coast of the US. We're here in London, which is our European headquarters. And we're also over in India in Bangalore. If you could go to the next slide, that would be great. Thanks. So maybe just 5 kind of high-level things about Accel, what makes us, I guess, distinct and what defines us as a firm. So the first point that I just mentioned is being global is really important for us at Accel. It's important because we want to identify the most exceptional founders and teams and companies wherever they happen to be from. So our global platform is super important for that. But the second reason why being global is very important is that the companies that we work with almost always have global ambitions. And we want to go on that journey and support those companies and those founders in being successful globally. Second thing is we've been around for a long time now, so 4 decades. I think in venture, that's really important because we've been through these cycles and the good times and the bad times with founders. We know that this is a long-term business, long-term relationships, and we're fortunate to bring that experience to bear when we work with the companies that we invest in. The third point here is very central to everything we do at Accel, which is this concept of a prepared mind. So what this means for us is whenever we make a new investment or we think about a new space, we try and enter that opportunity with what we call a prepared mind, which means we've gone really deep on that particular industry or topic or trend. We speak to as many people as we can to educate ourselves. We talk to our founders that we work with so that when we meet the special company in that industry, we're ready. We have the prepared mind. And that's really our approach as investors. And then just to finish off here, as a sort of investment strategy, we are fortunate to invest really at every stage of a company's life cycle. But it's really important for us that we're there as their first partner as well. So many times we'll invest at the seed or Series A stage of a company's life cycle. And we're fortunate to have funds that allow us to support those companies and those entrepreneurs all the way through to eventually, in many cases, becoming a public company, which we've had over 125 such journeys in our history. And then last, but definitely not least, is that we're a firm that's all about team. So team, it's not really about individual investors or individual offices or companies. It's all about how can we win? How can we be successful? How can we enable great entrepreneurs to realize their vision as a team? And one way that shows up is lots of the senior investors here at Accel started in much more junior roles. And that's what this last bullet point is relating to. So hopefully that just gives you a bit of context about Accel, what we're all about. And I think with that, I'll hand over to Chloe.
To me? Thank you, Will. So as Will said, we're very much around team before individual. And I wanted to spend just a couple of minutes sharing what we look for when we're hiring into our team. So on the screen there, hopefully you can see there's 6 different areas, kind of attributes and key strengths that we look for in individuals when they're joining our team. I won't read them out to you. I'll leave you to kind of read them yourself, but I just want to talk a little bit more about those. So when we are going through our recruitment process, we do a mixture of interviews, deep dives, and case studies. And throughout those, we're looking to assess these 6 areas. You can get these attributes, these attitudes from a variety of experience, but what we're looking for is, do you have them and do you have them consistently? So for example, when we're in interviews, we'll be looking for people who are sharing examples from their past experience of demonstrating these 6 things. And then in the case studies and the deep dives, we'll be looking if individuals have the ability to form conviction and take risks, or whether they've got clarity of thought and analytical skills when they're approaching tech opportunities and investments. So my kind of tip to you, whether you're speaking to us about future opportunities or any other VC, is think about what the success factors for that VC might be. And when you're speaking to them about opportunities or just meeting them on a speculative basis to build your network, think about how you can weave in relevant examples of how you might be demonstrating some of these success factors. There's a Q&A at the end, as we shared. So if you have any questions on this or our recruitment process, I'm very, very happy to answer them. But I will hand over to Holly.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And just ahead of the exercise with Noah around personal brand and storytelling, we wanted to give a few kind of practical tips for those that are starting to build out their network in venture. You know, we're well aware that for some of you, this is a skill set that comes very naturally, or you may have had experience previously. But for others, you know, adding a little bit of structure and really figuring out what feels authentic to you can really help break down the process and make kind of networking more efficient and effective. And I think the thing to stress just before we come on to these bullet points is, you know, when it's done well, networking is not simply a sort of series of random interactions one-off. It's really deep intentional relationships that build over time. So just to kind of highlight a couple of points to think about here, clarify your purpose and your approach. So it's important to really think about who you're looking to meet and why. obviously what skills and experience you may be wanting to gain, whether you're answering, looking to answer certain questions, that's also sort of something to kind of clarify to yourself up front. And of equal importance is really the sort of value you can bring to the interaction. And I think that's relevant even if you're a beginner in a space. What are you building on in terms of your unique angle? And I think, for every person in this, well, I guess, virtual room, there might be a subtle difference to your answer. Some of you might be coming to this to explore the industry. Others may be dead set on getting a job in venture. But whatever the angle is, developing sort of fruitful long-term relationships really requires you to be intentional about how you build out those connections. And obviously, it's worth pointing out that it's likely to be a twofold approach, combining both the sort of informal, whether it be social media engagement or email approaches, with obviously the sort of face-to-face or one-to-one events as well. And again, you're likely to want to do a combination of both. It's okay if you over-index on one of these two buckets in order to obviously build a personal profile that is very authentic to you. And then moving on, it may sound obvious, but the be prepared point shouldn't be underestimated, particularly in a competitive market. Where possible, do your research. And I think, that applies whether you're reaching out to someone cold or whether you're having a meeting in person. Really, it pays dividends if you can kind of come armed with whether it's knowledge on a certain topic, whether it's mutual areas of interest, or maybe you see that there's a connection that you have that's in common. Those sorts of things can really help as you want to kind of build credibility and rapport quickly. They can kind of really elevate you or give you the edge when looking to sort of stand out in some of those first interactions. And I guess particularly in a world where some of those interactions might be Zoom first, those are the things that, and again, we'll come on to this in a minute with Noah, but those are the things that might be the lasting or memorable comments that you have people kind of take away from the conversation. Ask for help is another one. I think, you've all obviously through Future VC got an opportunity to leverage this as a resource, but sort of take the time to really think through and research other places that could help you elevate your network, knowledge and exposure. Just as a kind of couple of examples, whether it's investing competitions, talking to friends in portfolio companies, maybe it's your university kind of alumni groups, headhunters in the space, all of these could give you a unique angle when you're talking about building that sort of first insertion point into the industry. I'll leave develop your story as I said, that's sort of where we're going to spend some time with Noah in a minute. Listening, again, on the face of it, sounds obvious. What we want to stress here is that there's the tendency in conversations to really focus on the information that you want to make sure that you get across. And actually, of course, that's an important element. But if you take a step back, sort of deep listening and understanding what information, network and resource is being shared with you, and therefore, what pertinent questions you can ask and how you can engage really fully, gives the opportunity to kind of build that safe space where someone might open up a little bit, share, and where you can kind of deepen the relationship over time. And then last point on collaborate generously, I think don't underestimate this one. I think for me at least, it's one of the fundamentals of building a sort of strong and sustainable network. Be prepared to give first. And every time you connect with someone, whether it's you make a connection for them, you drop them an article that they might enjoy, maybe it's that you solve a pain point that they had, or simply, you're talking about holidays and you have something that again could be a nice personal follow-up. It's got to be authentic, but if it's done well, it's really a way to kind of be memorable. And candidly, whoever is on the other end of that conversation, irrespective of seniority, background, or experience, it's a relevant point to think of the value you can bring to them, not just in an interview setting, but when you're kind of connecting with people generally. And then just finally, again, taking it one step further, for those of you where actually adding a little bit of structure to networking could benefit you kind of getting access to the venture space, there's obviously a whole host of different ways that you could do this. This might not feel natural to you. It may be a good way just as a starting point. But potentially map out the people that you currently know, map out the people and the groups of people that you hope to get to know, and start to figure out the connections or the potential connections between these groups. And again, conscious that this may be a very small pool of people to start with, that's okay. It's about being sort of intentional and adding a little bit of structure, so the task starts to feel less daunting. And actually, by writing it down and by sort of assessing the depth and breadth of your existing network, you can then really identify the gaps and actually figure out on an individual person by person or fund by fund basis, what are your best access points? Is it online and via social media? Is it cold? Is it at an event? Is it through a connection? But it also really helps when you think about then linking your networking activity against kind of personal goals. Some of these tips might just make it feel a little bit more action oriented rather than a series of sort of non-connected interactions. So hopefully that's a helpful couple of points. As Chloe said at the end, we can come back to questions on any of this. But for now, Noah, over to you.
Hello, and thank you. I'm loving that expression of the prepared mind, because there was so much in that that resonated. And two things I wanted to pick out. Chloe talked about the 6 success factors, and 2 of those being authenticity and humility, which is wonderful, because partly I think that's why we're going to get into storytelling, why that's so good. And it's also kind of counterintuitive, because I think what we get into in all of this is, how can I be really impressive? And how can I transmit how impressive I am? And actually what Holly was just talking about there, about listening and about humility and understanding, for me is, I think, a far more powerful way of connecting. I was looking at the Future VC website, and there were 2 comments that stood out in some of the videos of participants, and these are my 2 favorite. Who are you? The nightmare question. And I totally get where that comes from. So that was one of the comments. And your story is relevant and important to VC, even if you come from a deprived part of Stratford and a single parent family. And that diversity of thought and who you are is, for me, the kind of the antidote to that other point about who are you. So that's why we're going to talk about stories, because I think stories answer all of that. I think stories are basically our version of, this is my experience. In a minute, Bola is going to help me, because we're going to work on some story techniques. But I thought I might just start with the kind of basics of why stories are so powerful. I kind of feel like, in a way, I don't need to, because they're almost part of human DNA, that stories are, and there's all sorts of wonderful research about how they connect with different bits of our brain, how we see, when we see things in stories, we feel things in stories, that it has a different motivational factor, a different memorability. And the other side of storytelling is, once we get into storytelling, it's much easier for us. It's a much more fluid way to talk about our experiences. It's much easier to do it. So I could go on and on about stories. I'm going to start by talking about the shape of a story. So I'm going to put up a slide in a minute that comes from somebody called Joseph Campbell, who was a kind of Jung devotee in that whole kind of psychology of the 1950s. And he came back and he said, basically, there is a shape to stories. And his shape is really complicated. And I'm going to give you an incredibly basic version of that shape. But it's basically about overcoming. And once you get into the hang of thinking, the shape of the story is that it's not just a simple road. The shape of the story is, what did you have to overcome? And at the end of that story, you look back and you go, that's the insight. That's what I've learned. So when Chloe was talking about humility. In a way, that's why stories are so good, because if we tell stories actually of things we've struggled with, things that we've had to overcome, it makes us far more human and far more interesting. So in a way, and I know that feels very counterintuitive to, I've got to bust in somewhere and look impressive. How can I just be impressive? And actually, that's where stories, for me, the Greeks had their word for it, which is pathos. You know, that we have to have pathos. So can we just put up that slide? And in a minute, I'm going to introduce you to Bola, who I hope is there somewhere, and I'm very grateful. So we'll do that in a second. But Bola, this is also for your benefit a bit. So that's kind of referring to what I've talked about. To overcome, and then you get insight and you reflect. And the shape of a story, if you put yourself at the kind of beginning, that inciting incident, the bottom of that story, that's where you are now. You then go on this series of challenges, and this is kind of classic archetypal story. And at the end, you look back and you go, that's what I've learned. And we can both use that in mini examples and in overarching stories. So let me get rid of that and let me introduce you to Bola. Have we got? And we'll get rid of slides altogether. So I just, while we're doing that, I'm just going to say a word. Bola and I had a chat yesterday, and I said, look, I'm just going to, this is about how we're going to run today. And I said, just give me your version at the moment of like what you would say if I was saying your story. And it was really impressive. So, we played around with a few ideas of what if you did this or what if you did that. And how we're going to run today is we're going to do one version of Bola's story. There you are. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you perfectly. I realize how bad the lighting is in mine. This is getting like, I'm going to put that up. Is that any better? So yeah, we're going to play around with versions of that, Bola, and thank you for doing this in advance. So we're all backing you. You don't have to be, and I just want to sort of give a bit of context as what we're doing today. This doesn't have to be, wow, that was impressive. This is all of us learning on this together. So no pressure, everyone's on your side. It doesn't have to be impressive, it's just trying out techniques. And of course, where you go with this and how you take this for your own benefit later, it's kind of up to you. You know, there are going to be versions of this that you would use in that classic elevator pitch, but there are going to be versions you'd use in a conversation that was much more easygoing. So we'll see where we go with that. So we'll do it once. I'm going to give you some feedback. We may get some feedback. In fact, it'd be really useful to get some feedback from the Excel team, assuming sound and everything is working. And then I might make some suggestions. We'll see, to just play around with. So version 1, let's have a go, Bola.
Fantastic. Hello, everybody. Great to meet you all. As Noah said, thank you to the Excel team for joining us. Really appreciate you giving up time out of your schedule for us. But jumping straight into the intro. So I'm Bola, as you know. I'm Nigerian. I was born in Nigeria. And I came to the UK at the age of 11. And I've always had a passion for technology. My first sort of foray into technology was within the aerospace industry. I worked on propulsion systems, building aircraft engines at General Electric and so on. However, that was just a little bit too slow for me. My boss was saying to me that it would take me 20 years before I ever got to build my own aircraft engine. So that was a little bit too slow for me. And I found my way into the world of tech startups. There's different types of technology. So I've taken on several roles. I started off as an intern. I co-founded my first company. And most recently, I co-founded a company called Predina, which was using AI to predict where car accidents are likely to happen. I exited that company to Zego. I'm sure you know Zego, a UK unicorn, insurance unicorn. And I joined Cisco as an entrepreneur in residence, helping them to come up with ideas in the machine learning and MLOps space. And I also joined Ada Ventures as a venture partner. So I think everybody's probably had this thought throughout 2020-21 of what do I actually want to do in my life, right? Where do I want to go? Where do I want to go? What am I excited about? And I did some soul searching, and I found out that there were a couple of things that, you know, were really exciting to me. One, I love technology. I've always loved technology. Two, I really got a lot of energy from helping founders go through all the difficulty and all the stresses that I've been through as a founder, sharing, empathizing with those founders. And thirdly, you know, I'm quite curious about different business models. I found that when I was a founder, I had like shiny thing syndrome. I was always interested in different things. And then I kind of just landed on VC and I thought, okay. And then I've tried being a VC as a part-time venture partner at Ada. And I've come to the conclusion that actually this is what I want to do going forward. So this is my sort of story. It would be great to get your feedback on it.
Lovely. Well done, Bola. If you could hear it, we were all clapping. Lovely. How, just out of interest, Bola, how did that feel? We had play around yesterday a bit compared to what you did. How did that feel just then?
I think it felt more natural, it felt more authentic for sure. And I think I felt more comfortable actually. With it. Obviously it's different. I've been like, I don't know how many people are on the call, but I definitely felt that it was more authentic and I felt it was more natural to me actually.
Yeah. What made it more authentic and natural?
It was your feedback around, hey, you know, sharing more, it's not really around the hero story, everything was perfect. Sharing things, showing vulnerability.
Brilliant.
And I think me sharing that, I think naturally brought a more authentic side to me. So I think that was great in terms of that feedback. Fantastic.
Brilliant. Well done. My favorite bit was when you went, everybody's had that thought, what do I want? And there was something humble and humility of like human, of like, yes, we bloody have. So that was, for me, that was a real moment of kind of just opening up, because it was incredibly impressive. And and by the way, being impressive at the right time is great. So being a founder of two companies, brilliant, bloody use it. It somehow, it took it to another level when you went, for me, everybody's had that thought, what do I do? And I've had a few things. There was so many good things in it. I'm going to, after this, put a slide up of story techniques, stuff that's good. And I'll just say off the bat, though, one of the things I liked is when people give metaphors, it's something is a bit like. So you did I've got shiny thing syndrome. I haven't even heard of it. It was brilliant. So I loved that. And I loved early years, you know, first foray getting, you know, starting in Nigeria 11. We may come back to, I know there was a little bit you and I played with there that was really nice, but we'll see, might come back to that or not. Let me hear from Axel, because you're the guys round the table doing it. What worked for you, and is there anything more you would want?
Happy to jump in there. So I, like, you know, I love the initial sort of personal touch. It's always nice to know someone's origins, roots, etc. Because again, whether we come back to that bit or not, it's a great opening. I then liked how you used the sort of learnings and experience around your prior industry being too slow to link to technology. To Noah's point, again, certainly the use of questioning, bringing everyone into the conversation, also just helped to animate your few minutes in a way that took it off being a kind of linear couple of moments. And I think the piece around you talking, you know, you said about being curious about different business models. Again, you know, one of the things we look for is someone that has that mindset. So probably would want to dig a little bit deeper there. And that leads on to the point, I guess, which would be I was sort of really excited to then hear, okay, what ultimately made you land on VC? Because we'd sort of gone through that journey of hearing everything that you've done before. And so now coming to today, what was it about venture that kind of amalgamated all of the things that you loved? So for me, it was only that bit where I could have happily listened to a bit more on that piece. but thought you did a brilliant job, put on the spot, certainly. Anything else from your side?
So like any good story, I wanted to know what was coming next. I was engaged, you had my attention the entire time, and we're a fast-paced business, and myself, I'm interviewing a couple of people a day normally, so I hear a lot of intros, and you had me the whole way through, and I felt like I was there with you, and there's that classic, people don't remember what you said, but they remember how you made them feel.
Yeah.
And I felt engaged in your story, and I think that's always a good sign of a great story. As Holly said, I would have loved a bit more at the end of like YVC, and kind of finish on a bit of a bang on that sense, because that's kind of bit that's most relevant to us as your current audience. When you have different audiences, there'll be different punchlines at the end. But for us, that's the bit. But thank you.
Thank you so much. That was super helpful. Really, really appreciate the feedback. I'm scribbling away. I don't know. Thank you so much.
And is there any other feedback?
For me, I personally love the soul searching bit because it really made me identify with what you were saying. Overall, I think it was very personal, which is quite hard to do, especially when there's an audience. And as Noah said at the beginning, it's hard because obviously, there's this conflicting view of wanting to be the best version of yourself, and at the same time wanting to be quite humble and real. And I think that's definitely a struggle, as with every conversation or with any audience that we present ourselves. But I personally loved it because it was very, very personal. And I think that really makes a difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe just to add, but I thought that was honestly one of the best personal intros I've heard. Really, I thought it was fantastic.
Thank you so much.
I was engaged. It had everything I wanted. I think just to maybe one suggestion for how you can zoom in on the Y Venture bit at the end. I'd love to hear maybe one company or one situation through your work with Ada that has really captured you and what you loved about that. So that's just one idea how you could weave a bit more of that in. But overall, I thought it was outstanding.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much.
That's really.
And we all have many questions, which is always great. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. What we'll do, I'd like to just experiment with a little bit of content, and I'm conscious of time, by the way, a little bit of content on the YVC. So we're just going to riff with some ideas here. I'm not saying this is exactly how you do it, but this is like mining for content. We're not going to do the whole other bit because there's loads in there that we all like. And I've got a couple of questions, and which is going to come to the YVC. So the first question I want you to play with, Bola, is whether you're talking about VC generally or Ada specifically. Tell me the best experience you've had and the worst experience you've had. Over to you.
Well, you're putting me on the spot here. Best experience I've had. I wouldn't say it was directly to do with Ada, but I think there was a pre-seed founder that I had known because I did Entrepreneur First. So I met him at Entrepreneur First. In fact, I wanted to co-found with him, but he went to do PhD at Cambridge. And it was someone that I really, really respected, and I thought had a lot of potential. One of the highest, someone I really respect. And he had this MLOps startup, and he was thinking, I'm just going to, he didn't really believe that much in it himself. But I saw that, hey, you have the potential to, don't limit yourself in terms of your potential. So I said to him, you should apply to YC. And he was like, I'm not good enough. I was like, no, you are good enough. You should apply to YC. I think you get in. You're incredible. So I helped him with the application, back and forth, how we position it, got into YC, raised, larger seed round than I raised, right, by the way. And it's crushing it. It's crushing it. I'm still an advisor to the company, and I get his investor updates. So that was fantastic.
Who is this company? I think we're all interested.
I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it properly. It's Tenyks. So TENYKS. TEN.
Yep.
Yes, yeah. The MLOps company. Really
Okay.
cool, really cool.
So good. It's working, Bola, because they're already interested. So
Yeah.
okay. And now, just quickly, what's the worst experience you've had?
I think the worst experience, and I think I need to get used to this as a VC, is, is knowing, a founder reaching out, and me speaking to them and it not being a fit for Ada. And I know I've been there in that sort of struggle. I need to raise, I know what's involved, but having to say, hey, look, it's just not a fit. And I think that's difficult. But I know that that's something that I have to do, and and continue to do as a founder, but as a VC, but to do it in a way that is respectful, as long as I'm honest with the entrepreneur.
So now, you're doing so good, Bola. Just combine those two stories, the guy that you helped and the not being the right fit, and answer this question for Will. Why VC? What is it about VC?
I think is the things that I mentioned, in the sense of, I think the biggest thing is a couple of things. I think there's a couple of combinations of things that makes it really, really exciting. I think one is you are making a bet on the future, right? You're making a bet on the future and making a bet that this future is going to play out. That's one. So the intellectual exercise of actually doing that is a really hard problem, really, really hard problem. That's one. And the second thing is, once you then make that bet and that bet is successful, right? You are seeing that founder, seeing them succeed, seeing them go from, this idea all the way to there, and seeing the employees, get successful, their lives change, and ideally those technologies are having an impact on the world. So it almost feels like you're kind of winning in every way. And I think that for me is both the head and the heart. I think is a good combination. So that is why I'd say from my end.
I'm clapping.
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Okay, I don't know. I'd be curious what the Excel panel there will make of what you just did. But as far as I'm concerned, what you just did was bang on. Now, interestingly, what happened to your energy, by the way, is you just came alive. Your vocal expression, your arms, your body, and that, talking about authenticity, felt very real. Gone is the I'm just going to play this kind of safe. You'd come alive, and actually, I think in story form, that was a real kind of vision of this is what we're going for. This is what I want to see people succeed. That's huge, and we felt that. So bang on. Panel, quickly, thoughts? Did he answer your question? Why VC?
I would say definitely yes. I felt the emotion, there was the passion, it was informed by experience. I think it was a very strong answer, Bola. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Again, for me, it was the energy, it was the use of pause, it was the emphasis on certain words. To Chloe's point earlier, kind of almost irrespective of what you said, we were all going to be engaged just because of the way that you delivered it. And then obviously the content as well was spot on, as Noah said. So yeah.
By the way,
sorry, just to add one thing. I thought, this is just a general point. I thought what you did really, what a clever device that you used there, Bola, that I like to try and use in different situations. I think it gives a really satisfying answer to a difficult question, is to bring 2 or 3 things together. And I think it's always quite compelling when you can bring structure into an answer, because it kind of hints that you're a structured thinker, which is a really important thing in many different jobs. So the fact that you said there are these 2 things that combine together, I felt just added a great foundation for the answer, and was super effective for me.
Thank you so much.
Well spotted, Will, and it's a really good point. My technical term for it is this or that. I think the Greeks had a much better term for it. but when you go opposites, so on that, we were playing with the concept of best and worst. So the best was seeing that guy, and the worst was that. Or what's my other version when we're just warming up and playing? Best, worst, first, last. And anything that's opposite, it's this or it's that. And Shakespeare went to be or not to be. That's the question. And the more you can play, it gives you storytelling scope to have opposites. Shall we? So what you've done in the course of that, and if someone had like a manual of storytelling, they could be ticking off, and I have ticked off quite a few techniques. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to put up a very simple slide, which has some of them, encompasses a lot of them. So these are the techniques. Facts. We love data. We love things to be rooted in facts. And in your case, actually, it wasn't especially fact heavy, but I think there was enough facts in it. The fact that you left Nigeria when you were 11, you joined a company that said it's going to take 20 years to do this. That was kind of factual, but you could go, obviously, sometimes good data works. Having an opinion, that's what happened at the end, I think. At the end, we started to see your own point of view. So before that, it was this is stuff that's happened, but towards the end, it was like what I like about it and what I want about it, and this is what I find difficult about it. Cracking. Anecdotes. My shortcut is if you begin a sentence with "I remember when," you're in anecdote territory. Basically, anecdote means anything which is talking about experience. So classic anecdote stuff was when you described that guy. I sat him down with his piece of paper. We worked this out. That was classic. There's another sort of model of storytelling, which is 3 Ps. It's people and it's places. Those both belong to anecdotes, and plot, which doesn't belong to anecdote. That belongs to the overall one I've talked about. But people and places, if you've got those, that's going to be rich. And the final one, metaphor, I'm so pleased you got one, because they're the hardest. They're the most memorable, but they're the hardest. So the shiny thing syndrome is a good image, and a metaphor is basically something that looks like something else. And when you get a good metaphor, sometimes they come out of the ether, sometimes they just happen. They're very memorable. Work them, use them. Good. So I think we're done on the technique. I'm conscious of time because we've got 6 minutes for questions. Over to you guys.
Perfect. And Julia, I don't know how you want to do this, but we're obviously happy, as we've said at the beginning, to answer questions on any part of today or things that we haven't covered. So please do either type them in the box or mention to Julia, and we'll happily jump in.
Yes, everyone, please put a note in the Q&A. We usually just go straight to the Q&A and run through those. So while you think about how you're phrasing your questions, I've got a question to get started off, which is, does everyone who's presented today, what would you say is the most effective piece of networking that you've ever done? And do you have an example, building on Noah's points about anecdotal stories?
I can start just one example. So the example I would have is to be extremely nice with people that you meet. Sounds really obvious, but there was a founder of a company I met back in 2014. At the time, I was actually with a different firm. It was focused on later stage investing, and her business was too early stage for that firm to be able to invest. So I couldn't move forward with that conversation. But I had a really nice discussion, and I tried to be super respectful, value add in the discussions, etc. We kept in touch, and I think she really enjoyed that discussion. I was really fortunate. What happened after that was she, it turned out, knew a lot of other founders, and she ended up making an introduction for me with a founder that we did invest in. And it's actually been the most successful company that I've been able to invest in so far in my career. And I wouldn't have been in touch with that company were it not for that initial meeting with the founder who wasn't a fit, but who I had a good discussion with, and in particular, I tried to go above and beyond, even though it wasn't a fit. So I'd say it kind of goes back to what Holly was saying earlier, but bring value. But most importantly, I think just be a nice person. Try and bring good things. And it's funny how these things come around.
And I think as an extension of that, my example would be around, never being dismissive. I think you can sometimes look, and again, to Will's point, you can sometimes look and want to see on paper something that is an immediate, impactful conversation for us as Accel. And actually, that's not the right way to approach things. Every interaction, you never know who they will know. You never know what insight that they might have, or kind of where the conversation might evolve to. And I had a similar but different example where we met a company that was just not going to be a fit for us. Actually, the founder, a few months later, we were helpful. We continued the conversation. We made some introductions. The founder, a few months later, came back to us and said, actually, I've decided that there isn't a big enough market for the business that I looked to build. But now I'm interested in potentially joining a company. And this is where, again, the kind of beauty of the kind of whole and the network effects. We've literally in the last few days just placed that individual into one of our seed stage companies in a C-level role that's going to be sort of incredibly valuable to that company. And again, if we'd been rude to that founder, dismissive, if we'd not tried to explore multiple avenues or been helpful, then the outcome that we've got 6 months later would never have been able to occur. So yeah, it's kind of building on the point that Will said, but the don't be dismissive of any one point, I think, is a really key thing.
Julie, do you want us all to give an answer, or is there another question? I'm very happy to, and I'm sure Cassandra is too, but if other questions have come in, happy to answer those as well.
I can see there's someone who's writing something, and I don't know when that's going to come through. So let's keep going.
Right. So I couldn't echo what Will and Holly have said enough. I guess my additional tip on networking is when you're having the conversations, and it goes back to the storytelling and what Cassandra is saying about being personal. Sometimes showing a bit of vulnerability is a really powerful thing. It goes back to what I was talking around authenticity, but we've all got our hang-ups, we've all got the stuff we're insecure about, we've all got a bit of imposter syndrome in these conversations. So I think if you go in being authentic, humble, and a little bit vulnerable, you'll often find the other person responds to that, and you can have a much deeper conversation. It doesn't just need to be surface level. You can dig a bit deeper, you can get more insights, and I truly believe you can learn something interesting from everybody. So if you go in with that mindset and go in very humble, I think the conversation just goes to a deeper level far more quickly. And I think, I've personally found that effective in networking, but other parts of my life and role as well.
And I couldn't agree more with everyone. I want to say what basically Chloe said as well, that don't underestimate the chit chat at the beginning of the conversation, because there are a couple of super valuable insights that you can get out of this. It's always nice, when we have a call with the founder in the beginning and you're waiting for the other person to join the Zoom call, and there are these 3-4 minutes that you kind of spend on, COVID and how the weather and all these things. And it's just a nice way, obviously by keeping it professional, but it's a nice way, a window to each other's life, and a nice way to build rapport and actually build the relationship. We had so many times that we're actually, getting to know more about a person's life and where they are right now, if they're traveling, if they have children, if they're married, if, things like that are actually great to, build the relationship further and get a little bit more personal. So yeah, I think personally, I find this always valuable and quite frankly, interesting.
Great, thank you. The dots disappeared, so I don't know if a question got answered or if someone can phrase it. But we are now on past 8:30, it's 6:30, and I don't want to keep you any longer. So thank you so much for your time today. everyone watching, if you have any questions, as usual, kind of try and provide some ways to get in touch post session. Oh, a question's just come through. No. Do we have time for one quick question?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
I mean, we're more
okay.
than happy.
Okay. One very quick question related to personal branding, or specifically constantly advised to be honest and true to ourselves and nice to everyone, which I think is important. But at the same time, how do you ensure that you do not lose credibility? Do you mean if you don't want to be nice to that person, or if you're okay? Yeah.
Can I say something on that?
Yeah.
I think it's I think it's bang on. I think the sentiment behind that question is bang on. I don't know if I talked earlier about those the root of the word audio producing, which is to hear, authority and authenticity. And I think it's the blend of the two. I think authority and authenticity have to happen. And by that, I don't mean being bossy. I mean being credible, being, and I think there is a place where those two overlap. So absolutely, just full disclosure in all situations, full vulnerability, I think you'd have to be very mindful of. You have to think of context and where that is. So I think I think that's something that evolves. You know, the role that we play, because being in the role of a venture capitalist has certain expectations that go with it, and I think you've got to also step into that.
Okay, and clarify the reason for the question is that you have a feeling that when you're young, female, etc., when you're like cheerful, people can sometimes take you less seriously. I can understand where that might come from. I think Noah's right. There's a way of being authoritative and being cheerful, but I will see if Excel, as many young females in the room, have anything else to say.
No, and I think this is where it can kind of come back to some of those story techniques, because absolutely we would want to see, you know, on the authority side, we would want to see things grounded in fact. We would want to see you putting forward the sort of positive side of everything experientially as well. But also, again, going back to the authentic piece, you know, you'll try different styles, you'll try different ways of presenting yourself that just don't feel like you, and candidly then, you know, rethink, because we certainly don't want to make everyone sort of, I guess, like cookie cutter in the way that they approach this, and agree with whoever wrote this question that, yeah, finding that delicate balance, of course, is a difficult one that kind of is honed over time. Agree with the sentiment.
And if I can add to that, I'm assuming the young female that asked the question, forget about it. You can't change your age, and you can't change the fact you're a woman. Embrace it. I joined VC at the end of last year, and prior I was in a tech travel company, and I was running a team of 100 people, and virtually everybody was older than me. And if I spent energy or time thinking about that, I would have taken cognitive energy away from actually doing my job. And that wouldn't have helped me or anybody else in the team that I was serving. So, you know, there's some stuff in life we can change and control, and there's some stuff that we want to work on for our personal impact and our progression, and there's some stuff we can't. So embrace it. It's part of your identity, and don't waste energy on trying to change something. Use it as your story. And as Noah was saying earlier, often stories, you kind of have that climax of something you're overcoming. You know, is there something you had to overcome where you were underestimated? Because, you know, I've walked into a board meeting and they assumed I was there to make the tea, and I was actually there to present. You know, we've had that. Those are things we overcome. They can add huge depth and quality to your stories. So yeah, hopefully some useful anecdotes for whoever asked the question.
Brilliant, thank you. And yeah, hopefully we can we'll have hopefully one day those conversations and those situations in the boardroom won't happen anymore of this.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
That's why we're doing this. So thank you again, everyone, for joining, and thank you also everyone for attending and watching. We're going to share slides and share the recording next week. As usual, please check on Monday. It will take a little while for everything to upload. Something that's come through on Slack. I think a few messages and emails haven't gone through from my personal email address, from my work email address, sorry, from Future VC. If you are waiting to hear from me and you haven't heard anything in the last couple of weeks, please message me on Slack, and I will try and get back to you just a little bit of admin at the very end there, so apologies. But thank you again to Excel. And
And Bola, I think.
Sorry.
Mola,
Thank you.
I thought of
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to say thank you so much to Noah and you know the rest of the Accel team. I know you're really busy. You're really busy, and you've taken time out of your busy schedule to sit with us at 6:30. I think that and you just especially on the Accel side, because you have so many members of the team. I was just expecting one person, so really appreciate it. Thank you so much. The feedback was very helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And look, this is incredibly important to us. So please, don't feel that it has to just be within this session. Reach out, whether it's to Julia or us directly. We'd love to hear from you. And obviously, Bola, thank you so much for being prepared to be the volunteer today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a brilliant evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Noah. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.